Now let's wrap this thing up for the month of December, and we're going to do it with something called 5 on 5. Now, if you've never been here for a 5 on 5, don't worry. I'm about to take you from out of the dark into the light. Here's what a 5 on 5 is. There are 5 people that will speak today. That's the first 5. The second 5 is they have 5 minutes to stand up here and talk. This is a church, and God is a God of grace. I am not going to be graceful today. I am going to yank them off the platform if they go over 5 minutes. Now, the great thing is you will know how much time they have left. So here's what will happen. The clock will start. When it gets to 1 minute left, you'll see a sign like this go up. They will know, and you will know they have 1 minute. At 30 seconds, another sign just like that, except for it has a 30 on it for 30 seconds. They will know, and you will know how much time they have left. I will be watching the last 10 seconds. When it gets to 0, I will be coming on this platform, and I will be talking over the top of them and telling them they're done. And you're going to help me make sure that they know they're done. Here's what you're going to do. When I come on that platform, you're going to stand on your feet and start clapping and screaming as loud as you can. So if they're trying to talk, they can't talk over you. All right? I will remind you of that, but I need your help with that. The thing I love about the 5 on 5 is that you get to hear from 5 different people who are going to share 5 different things, 5 different perspectives, and I guarantee you there will at least be one person that you resonate with, or the thing that they say today, you'll have something shift or change, or you'll feel those goosebumps. Something's going to happen from what one of these people say, and you get 5 different opportunities to hear from God and hear what God wants to say to you through their story and through what they're going to talk about. So y'all scream at me. Are we ready to kick this thing off? All right. Just getting practice for afterwards. So let me introduce this first person. He is a husband. He is a dad of 2 girls, 2 daughters. That's enough to put a man in prison. He is also a grandpa. Now, his wife, she chose not to be called grandma. She wants to be called glamma. So I can only assume we should call him Glampa. And if you're familiar with glamour shots back in the day, this guy, a regular picture to him is a glamour shot. He's that good looking. He serves here faithfully at Freedom House. He's actually one of our service pastors for our 12:15 service. He's a life group leader. He helps lead our strong men's ministry here at the church. He's been in racing and working in racing for many years, but a few years ago got his real estate license, and he and his wife actually just recently, this last year, opened up a real estate company. And I created a motto statement for them that they don't know I created, and so I'm going to share that with you today. If you're looking for a home and don't know what to do, call this guy. He's the man for you. Pretty good, huh? That's $100 to me every time they sell a house. He loves to play golf. So for him, when it comes to unwinding and enjoying just a day to rejuvenate and recharge his batteries, he's probably going to pick going to play golf. Now, one question we asked all 5 people to answer, it's a hypothetical question. The question is, if you were involved in doing any Olympic event, whether it's summer or winter Olympics, which event would you choose to do? Now, you don't have to be good at it. Remember, hypothetical, it just might be something you like. So this man's answer to that question was the Olympic event he would do would be bobsledding. This is where the people get in that metal thing that looks like a big pill you got to take, and they go about 10,000 miles an hour down an ice track that looks like you could fly off at any moment. That gives you a little taste of his need for speed, okay? So everybody, if you will, give it up for Mr. Aaron Blanton.
Hello, Freedom House. Hope everybody's doing great today. 2018 is right around the corner, and I was thinking about one thing I could share with you that could encourage you going into that next year, that actually may set up an awesome financial year for you, an awesome career for you, an awesome marriage for you, whatever it may be. And this one thing is something that I've tried to model my life after, and it's this verse. It's Matthew 6:33. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. See, it's a verse that my dad taught me very young, and he said, son, whatever you do, just put God first, and he'll take care of the rest. I was like, all right, that's what I'm going to do. So I just tried to follow his example that he had in my life, and basically that's what I did. So here I am speaking to you today, hoping to encourage you going into this next year. But here's the interesting thing about that verse. It doesn't say just to seek God. It says to seek God first. What does it look like to seek God first? Well, I love analogies, so I'm going to give you one. Let's just imagine right now we're in your kitchen, everybody's having a good time, having a little holiday get-together, and somebody yells, stop! I've dropped my contact lens. Well, you know the next thing. Everybody just recklessly runs out of the room, right? No, that's not what happens at all. Cautiously and gingerly, everybody gets down on their knees and starts looking for this contact lens, right? Yeah, it looks like a scene from a drive-by because everybody's on the floor, right? But no, that's exactly what God wants us to do. He wants us to stop and model that example of, hey, God, I want your perspective first. Before I take another step, before I make another move in my life, I want your perspective first. And I want you to set that path for me. See, it's very important. Whether it's a decision to move across the country, whether it's a decision to make a career move, make a purchase, whatever it may be. Here's what happened to me. A few years ago, me and my wife had been planning on building our dream home. And it's 10 years in the making, and I wanted to sell the house we were currently in. So after about a year and a half, that house had not sold. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess it's time to pray about it a little bit more. So God, what's your timing on this? Well, to make a long story short, here's what happened. God's timing came up. The first person looked at our house, gave us full price for it. The next thing that happens, we bought a lot. We got 25% off that price of the lot. And then we wanted to wait a little bit to build our home. God said, no, here's the finances for it. I want you to go ahead and do it right now. I was like, all right, awesome, right? Well, here's the cool thing. After we signed the contract, the price of lumber skyrocketed. And come to find out, our builder made less than $10,000 on that house. So I call that favor. He may not. But that's not my problem, right? So seeking after God first, I want you to know that God is not hiding. He wants you to seek him first to find out, all right, God, what would you have me to do? What is your perspective on my life? Think about it like this. Think about if you're wearing a pair of glasses, and some of you do here, and you slide them up on top of your head, go have a conversation, answer the phone, get a drink of water, whatever it may be, and you're like, what in the world happened to my glasses? I just had those things sitting right here a minute ago. So you're walking around the house trying to find out where they're at, and then you pass that mirror and you realize they're right on top of your head. The very thing that could have gave you more clarity, that could have gave you more vision, was right with you the whole time. Well, guess what? We have a Father in heaven who wants to do the exact same thing. He's right there with you all the time. And if you would just include him in all your decisions, he's like, okay, I'll give you more clarity. I'll give you more vision. But you got to trust in me. All right? God, let's do this. See, Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 and 8 says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and everyone who seeks finds, and to him who knocks, it will be opened. So here's what I'm asking you today. What are you seeking in 2018? But more importantly, what are you seeking first? Because that's what that verse says, seek first. See, clarity comes through God. He wants to give you that vision in your life. So before you go into this next year, let's make a decision to put God first. All right?
Come on, stand on your feet, clap. Woo! So here's my one takeaway and one thing that I really heard strongly from what Aaron said is God is not only wanting us to seek him, but he's wanting us to do that first. And I love that picture of the glasses on the head. God is always there. We're the ones that think he's gone, but he hadn't gone anywhere. All right, let's get to the next individual that'll be coming up on this platform. This guy is a husband. He's a father to 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, which is the same as me, and our kids are all about the same age, which causes for a great connection of our two families. Our families are very close. Our kids play really well together. And if you're a parent, you know when you find other kids that your kids play well together with, it don't matter what you think about that couple, you're going to hang out with them just so your kids can play away. But I will tell you what I think about him. I think he's a great guy. I love being around him. He and I actually share a passion. We both love the outdoors. His family does to camp, mine does too. But one passion that we share the passion of hunting. We love to hunt. It's our way to unwind. And if I have a hunting story, when I think of someone I want to share that with, this is the guy that I want to share that with. He's over our ushers here at Freedom House. He also serves as a life group leader. He connects and helps out crisis assistance and other ministries that help single moms and other people move that otherwise wouldn't be able to do that. He is a giving, just serving guy, and that's what I love about him. When asked about the Olympics, remember the Olympic event, he said that his event would be synchronized swimming. So Freedom House, I don't know what you're going to get today, but let's give it up for Mr. Quentin Miller.
There's a lot of people here today. All right, I'm going to jump right into this, jump right into the word. Mark 6:30-44. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to share the story. But when you get a chance, you get the opportunity to read it, find out how God would unlayer and unpack the story specific for you. Mark 6:30-44, it says, Jesus has been preaching all day. He was actually looking for rest, looking for solitude, and couldn't get away, but he'd been going, and the word says that it was getting late in the day. And the disciples interrupted him. They said, hey, Jesus, brother, it's getting kind of late. Brother getting hungry. Okay, we need to dismiss these people. We need to go get something to eat. And the disciples, or Jesus responded with, these are my people, feed them. And the disciples immediately gave him reasons why they could not accomplish the task Jesus had given them. They said, we don't have enough food. We don't have enough money. You know, it's going to take us months to save for this. We got to go to the store, Jesus. And Jesus is like, very simply, well, what do you have? And the disciples responded, well, Jesus, we've got 5 loaves and we've got 2 fish. And I love Jesus' response to this because it reminds me, if you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. With a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, they're trying to open a drink container or open a package or trying to get the straw through the little push packet. And the parent, you're looking at them and you're just like, bring it to me. Give me the 5 loaves, give me the 2 fish. Y'all know the story. Jesus blessed it. Everybody ate. All 5,000 men ate. Their families ate. The disciples ate. They all left full. The one thing that I wanted to share, this one thing that I would have for you, I think is very simple and apparent. My not enough is more than enough for Jesus. You see, I know of my earthly father. My earthly father knows of me, but I do not know my earthly father. In fact, when I was coming up, the only 2 examples I had of father, husband, wife covered under the covenant of marriage was my stepfather, who literally beat my mother within an inch of her life. She's watching. Hi, Mom. And my grandfather, who was an alcoholic. Every day, morning to night, he was in a bottle. Sun up to sundown. Every action, every hurtful word laced with liquor. In fact, I cannot, to this day, I cannot walk past the bar in a restaurant and smell the whiskey and not think of him. My examples that I had in my life were they were not healthy. I want to go back to the story. Jesus issued a charge to the disciples. He said, feed my people. Feed this group, feed my church. And the disciples said they gave him back excuses or reasons, really, why they could not. I want to ask you, what is your charge? And what are you telling God is the reason that you can't accomplish the task that he's given you? So for me, it was, I didn't have a good example of a father. I don't know what to do with this woman. I never saw a healthy example of a husband. Maybe yours is, I don't know, addiction. Maybe it's anxiety, depression. I don't know. I don't know what. Maybe if you're like me, you find your identity. You don't look for your identity in who God says you are, but maybe you look for it in your job, or you're looking for your spouse to give you an identity when Jesus says, "Come to me and I will give you the identity you need." So for me, in this illustration, my wife is that is my 5 loaves and my 2 fish. For me, my children are my 5 loaves and 2 fish. And we're not doing anything special. We didn't do anything special, but we just did like the example. We took it to Jesus. Amen?
All right. Woo! Good job, man. Y'all stand up. Come on, give it up. Get off your couch at your house and stand up and clap for this man. These people are finishing too early. They're catching me off guard down there. I can't even get up here. I haven't had a chance to cut anybody off. That's all I'm waiting for. So here's my one thing for what Quinn said, and he said it very well, is that whenever we feel like we're at a place where we are not enough, we don't have enough, if we'll give that over to God, he turns it and makes it more than enough. So we can never look and say, we can't do it. We just say, I got to give it to him and let him do it. All right, let's call up this next person up here. Let me tell you a little bit about this person, this lady. She is a wife to a Charlotte fireman. Right down here, yeah. Wife to a Charlotte fireman. She is a mother to 2 boys. She serves here at Freedom House. Actually, her and her husband went down when we launched our South End campus last Easter. They were some of the volunteers from here at Central that said, hey, we want to go down and help that get started. So she actually oversaw and helped run and get the whole coffee shop area down there running. They just have transitioned back to come back to Central since they live closer to this side of town. She told me she's a tax shareholder. I didn't really know what that meant, but she told me to tell y'all what it meant. So I'm going to tell you. Here's what it means for her to be a tax shareholder. When you get your taxes back this year, you're supposed to share that money with her and she'll hold on to it for you. Hey, I'm like a puppet. I just repeat what was told to me. I ain't making this stuff up. For her to release and unwind, she loves to work out. And when it comes to her Olympic event that she would participate in, she would play basketball. Everybody, let's give it up for Bobby Joe Lazarus.
June 28, 2014. That was the one day that our lives would pivot in a direction that would eventually bring us through the doors of Freedom House. I want to share with you a picture from that day because this became our reality. The night before was a Friday night. It was a normal night. She was at the firehouse. I came home with the kids, walked in the door, and Mason went to the table and started playing with cars. I went into the living room and sat down. A few minutes later, I heard him fall. I scooped him up and took him back to the living room with me and rocked him until he fell asleep. And in my mind, I thought, I have one child asleep for the night. That means I'm that much closer to going to bed myself. The next day was a Saturday. We woke up. It was a normal day. We met Drew at the gym, and afterwards we went to get coffee. As we're standing in line waiting for our coffee, Mason starts screaming that his head hurts. And I start telling Drew about the fall, and I said, maybe he hit his ear when he fell and he just bumped it or something. So we decided we're gonna go home, consolidate cars, and I would take him to the urgent care. Drew and Mason get home first. I walk in the door behind them, and I find Mason completely lethargic and having thrown up. Every bell and whistle in my head starts going off that this is not right. So we get the family in the car to head to urgent care, and by this point, he is no longer responding to my voice. He is no longer responding to pain, and he is turning white. So I call the urgent care, and I tell them what's happening, and they say, if you bring him to us, all we will do is call an ambulance. And I have just enough time to relay that message to Drew for him to take the on-ramp on the interstate and head to the hospital. When we arrive at the hospital, they immediately started administering medicine to keep his heart going. And we learned that when he fell the night before, he had fractured his skull and had a brain bleed that had let go that morning when we were standing in line for coffee. Not the night before when he fell, not in the middle of the night medically like it should have, not 3 hours later that day when he was down for a nap, but right when he was with us and we could respond to him. So as I'm sitting there and I'm taking this all in and I'm watching them work on him, it becomes too much. And so I step out of his room and I go into this waiting room that they have. And I start thinking to myself, I need to pray. Like, I have not done this in a while, but I clearly need to pray. Like, we're lucky that we even have a fighting chance at this point. And as I'm getting ready to pray, and I'm getting ready to basically offer God everything, including my own life, if that's what it would take to save my baby, I hear him say to me, and at the time I didn't know this as him, but he said to me was, you do not have to offer me all these things. All you have to do is ask for my help. And I did, and I begged for his help, and we needed it. Because as amazing as our medical team was at the hospital, there was a breakdown in communication, and the medic team that was transporting us to Levine's for surgery did not know how severe our bleed was. So that by the time we arrived at Levine's, they took us straight up to the OR, and the surgeon met us in the hallway. And that surgeon had the hands of God all over him because he was not a pediatric neurosurgeon, because the surgeon on call that day could not get to us in time. So he was the neurosurgeon that took our surgery. And as we're standing there in the hall and the nurses and the medic team are kind of doing their thing, he stops and looks at us and he says, this child needs surgery right now, and basically takes him and runs him down the hall into surgery. We later learned that Mason's bleed was so severe that he had a stroke, which meant that we had minutes to seconds to spare to get the bleeding released. But 3 days later, this is Mason. We are standing in the hallways of the hospital. We call this our ESPN story. We're standing in the hallways of the hospital, and we are tossing a ball to him, and he's connecting with it and hitting with it with that bat. But God wasn't done with us, because a few months later at Christmas, we went back to the hospital, and we brought cookies for the doctors and nurses, and we brought presents for the kids, but we really went back because we had this incredible night nurse named Sue, and I needed to thank her. Because while she was technically Mason's nurse, she was my mama nurse, and she got me through those really scary nights. And as we're standing in the lobby and we're talking, she looks at us and says, you know, when I got Mason as a patient, I knew he would live, but I didn't think he was going to be okay. And your story brought us back to church. So let me just leave you with this. When your journey is tough and you're asking God to reveal the why to you, take comfort in knowing that sometimes that why is not just meant for you. Sometimes there's a Sue who is watching your journey unfold, and that why might just be meant for her.
Come on, y'all, stand up, give it up.
Way to go, Bobby Joe.
I love that reminder that Bobby Joe shared that when you have those tough moments, when we'll all have them, if you haven't had one, there will be a tough moment in life, that sometimes that why is not only for you, and I think all the time, God has that why for someone else. It might be a year later or 2 years later, but you're going to come across somebody that is going through the same thing you went through. And if you allow God to work that out in you and heal you from that, you can share with them his power and your reality of how you allowed him to operate in that situation, which will encourage them better than anybody else can encourage them. All right, so now let's move on to the fourth individual that will be coming up on the platform. This young man is married. He actually is on our staff here at Freedom House, and I have the joy, and I feel like it's God shining his light on my life that I get to work alongside him on a regular basis. I love being around this guy. When I am around him, though, sometimes I stop and go, dang, I'm old. Because he's like 24 or 25 or something, and I'm a little bit older than that, but I'm reminded that I can't keep up with him as much. He loves it when he has free time. He loves to work on cars. He likes to mess around and tinker with things and actually fix them. I just tinker with them. One thing that we both love is a particular show, and that show is called The Office. And if you love that show, then good. If you don't, we will have an altar call later and give you a chance to have a relationship with God. But here's how infused God has put The Office in our life, and I know that The Office is from God, is because I don't really believe that, okay? But about every day, he and I will make anywhere from 2 to 25 references of The Office just from what our day is going along. How much more is that just, God, is that you? Is that you, God? No, maybe not. So when asked the question, which Olympic event he would do, he said that he would do swimming, specifically the 50 meters, because he's a sprint swimmer. So I immediately got on the phone, I called Michael Phelps, and I said, hey man, don't worry. It's good that you're not gonna be there next year because there's a guy that would beat you anyway. So don't show up. Everybody, if you will, give it up for Mr. Adam Mulcahy.
Thank you, Pastor Michael, for threatening Michael Phelps for me. Well, good morning. I'm honored to be up here speaking with you today. I hope everyone had a great Christmas. It's crazy to think that tomorrow we're going to be starting 2018. Before we get too far away from the Christmas season, I want to go back and talk about one part of the Christmas story that we're all familiar with. We've seen it in all the nativity scenes, maybe off to the side behind the sheep and the donkeys. That's the wise men. Now, we commonly think that there were 3 of them, even though we don't exactly know. But these guys, they only have one small part of the Christmas story. In fact, they're only found in one chapter in one book, and that's in Matthew. So in Matthew 2, verses 9 through 11, the word says that after they, being the wise men, had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen, when it rose, went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. And on coming to the house, they saw the child, Jesus, with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. When they opened their treasures, they presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And so just as the wise men each carried one thing on their journey to Jesus, my question to you today is, what is the one thing you are carrying? So Pastor Michael, if you give me a hand here, I'm going to tell everybody it's a 5-pound weight.
It's not.
It's 15. So go ahead and hold that for me. Now, would you say that that's heavy?
No, it's not bad.
It's not bad. See, Pastor Michael's strong. So Pastor Michael, if you could hold that out to the side for me just like that. Come on, it's only the 3rd time you've had to do this. Now, you see, many of us carry around a weight just like Pastor Michael here. It may look different for each person. For example, me personally, I deal with the weight of self-doubt. I can be overly critical of myself and question if I really have what it takes to achieve God's plan for my life. For me, my one thing is often insecurity. But for you, it may be different. It may present itself as depression, shame, or unforgiveness. And if we think about it, I think we can all think of that one thing that's weighing us down. We may carry it around, and it may not be as pretty as gold. In fact, it may feel ugly and burdensome. But when we lay those things at the feet of Jesus, he receives them as a gift, because what we're really doing is showing that we trust him. Thank you, Pastor Michael. So what Pastor Michael has helped me show you is that it doesn't matter what your one thing is. What matters is how long you carry it. You see, 15 pounds may not seem that heavy at first, but after a few short seconds, it becomes heavy. And it's the same way with our burdens. You see, the longer we carry them around before giving them over to God, the heavier they become. But what's interesting to know is that it's often difficult for us to give up our one thing. We walk around with the weight of shame, bitterness, failure, or insecurity, and we cling to them as if they were gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We're often afraid of what others may think if they find out we have problems. Or maybe we think that it's not a big deal and we can carry them on our own. Or for some of us in here, maybe we've carried around this weight for so long that it's actually attached itself to our identity and we've become complacent with the way things are. We carry the burdens on ourselves as if we're the only ones who can deal with them, when in fact, later on in Matthew, Jesus comes out and says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And so wherever you find yourself today, I would encourage you, take some time, write down your one thing and pray and believe and start to give that over to God. But don't be discouraged if you don't see a change right away. In fact, the wise men traveled for thousands of miles, and in fact, when they found Jesus, he was already 1 or 2 years old. So your journey may take some time, but believe me, I promise you it is worth it to see the amazing things that God has in store for you. And so one more thing that I'd like to point out from the story of the wise men is that regardless of how many there were, whether it was 3 or 15, we don't exactly know, but what we do know is there was more than one. And they were traveling together on their journey to Jesus. And if you've been around Freedom House for any length of time, you've heard the saying, we're better together. And that's something that I truly believe. Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves, and a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. So as you go along this journey to give your one thing over to God, I encourage you, get some strong, godly believers that will come alongside you to believe with you, to pray with you. In fact, we have this amazing opportunity coming up in the next few weeks to get started in a life group. We have some amazing people here at the church, believe me, and they would love to get to know you a little bit more in our life groups. And so for me, it's my prayer for you that in the coming year, in 2018, you will let your one thing become God's thing. Thank you.
Ooh, come on, stand to your feet. Give it up. Give it up. Yeah, get that weight off the platform. I've had to do that 3 times, as Adam mentioned. That's more workout I've had all 2017. I guess I'm going into the new year right. So here's the one thing that I take away from what Adam said, that I love the way he phrased it and said it, is that those things that we're carrying, they're tough and hard, but the reality is, and the bigger question is, how long are we carrying that, and how much is it weighing us down? Let's take the time to give it over to God so that we can not feel the weight of that anymore. I love that. Great picture. So let's get to our 5th and final individual that we're going to have come up here today and share with you. She is a wife. She is a mom to a boy and a girl. She is involved here at Freedom House with our guest services. So all the first-time guests and the guests that come through the doors, you feel welcome because of her and other people like her that talk to you and welcome you here at Freedom House. She's a life group leader. When I asked her what she enjoys, what kind of is a release or fun for her, she said that she loves to dance. So if you see somebody driving on the roads of Charlotte swerving all over the road, it's this lady listening to music because she's dancing in her car. All right? Ain't nobody else but her. Now, we asked the question, what Olympic event would you have participated in or would you participate in? She said, her response to me was, well, since they don't have cooking and eating in the Olympics, I guess I would say beach volleyball. Not because she likes volleyball, but because she likes the beach. I have no idea what Olympics she has ever watched before, but on beach volleyball, they're not just sitting around playing in the sand, laying out. Anyway, nonetheless, everybody, let's give it up for Miss Janife Inman.
Good morning, Freedom House. I stand before you convinced, beyond any doubt, that there's nothing that can separate me from the love of God that is found in Jesus. But that was not always my truth. When I was about 5, my mother left my sisters and I in the care of our grandmother in the Dominican Republic because leaving was the only way that she knew to give us a better life. My father also left my sisters and I. He remarried shortly after my youngest sister was born. So he was in and out of our lives as well. My childhood was also full of bizarre, weird, and supernatural events that, to be honest, I did not want to come up and share, but God kept pressing me to share that part of my life with you. During my childhood, there were times that I would walk into a stranger's home and be so oppressed with an air of heaviness that I could hardly breathe. Other times, I would wake up in the middle of the night and be unable to move or speak. I was paralyzed. There was this one time when I was about 11 that I had a very vivid dream. I dreamed of this older lady on a wheelchair that was calling to me to come to her, but I was too afraid to go to her in my dream. Unable to shake the dream, I shared it with my mom, who was visiting us at the time. And she explained to me that this woman that I described was my great-grandmother, someone that I had never met, never seen a picture of. And she also shared that for generations, my family had practiced Santeria, which is a West African and Caribbean form of witchcraft. Jesus saved and transformed my mother, so we were not raised in this practice. My mother, was also able to lead my grandmother to Jesus. When I was about 13, my sisters and I finally settled in the United States with my mother. And 4 years later, even though I did not speak one word of English, I received a college scholarship. And my 5 minutes could have been spent just telling you how good God had been to my mom and my sisters and I. But that was not the story he wanted me to share, because he always made a way for us. Away at college, I became friends, really close friends, with someone that I later learned practiced Santeria. For many reasons, I transferred to New York University to be closer to home. And while there, one of my really, really good friends was also someone that I later learned practiced Santeria. At this point, I realized that this darkness was not only haunting my dreams, but also chasing me in real life. And that the only way that I could get away from it was to submit my life to Jesus, to give it all to him, but I wasn't ready. And instead I ran like Jonah. I packed my bags and I left my mother's house, as if that would do it. And I moved in with a boy that was even more lost and confused than I was. But God wasn't done with me yet. He lovingly and patiently pursued me until I came home. And I would not leave again until my wedding day, because he had a different plan for me. I did not grow up believing in fairy tales or in happily ever afters. But God had a different plan. He gave me a loving husband, children, and a purpose. He has also brought me to Freedom House, where I feel loved, and by being vulnerable, I have been able to grow. He has opened my heart and my eyes to see the love of God in other people. And because of God, when I think about the one thing that changed everything, I see a person and not an event. I see God the Father, who became my Father and my provider before I knew him as Savior. And I see Jesus, who pursued me until I fell in love with him. He promised me, and he promises you, that he will give you beauty instead of ashes. He will give you joy instead of mourning. And he will give you the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. He alone could bring me out of that darkness into his light. Would you mind standing with me? I don't know your beginning, how deep your pain or how dark your past, but I do know the one who writes the end. I know the author and the finisher of your faith. I know the one that makes all things new. If you would close your eyes, would you allow Jesus to write the ending to your story? He is here with arms open wide, waiting for you. All you have to do is ask. I had to come to that conclusion and decision myself. He was there loving me through my rough childhood and my confusing and doubting teens. And even now, as I need him every day. If you are tired, like me, of running away, would you raise your hand, acknowledging that you would want him in your life today? Today's your day for new beginnings. I see you in the middle. Thank you. You don't have to wait like me. His arms are open wide. His love is chasing you down until you acknowledge that He is here and the new life that He has for you is so much greater and better than you can ever think or imagine. Would you mind repeating after me? Even if you already have Jesus in your heart, just join me in prayer and repeating out loud. Jesus, I come to you today just as I am. I acknowledge that you died for me to give me a new life, and you rose again to empower me to live it. I thank you for that. Come into my heart and rewrite my story. Amen.